I am sure in the last few years especially, you've probably asked yourself this question after looking out across society, across the cultural landscape. How in the world did we get here? How are we in the situation we are today where right is wrong, wrong is right, and as it says in the Old Testament book of Isaiah, woe to those who call good evil and evil good. Well, that's what we're going to look at on this episode of The Catholic View for Women. How in the world did we get here? And in particular, the truth about the transgender agenda. My name is Teresa Tomeo, along with my co-host of The Catholic View, Elena Rodriguez and Janet Morana. And this current trend that we're seeing, and have seen really, I think, this push for the transgender agenda, prior to, as we're going to hear in our excellent interview with Father Chris Alar, prior to the Supreme Court decision on so-called same-sex marriage, really heard very little about this issue of transgender. Right. Then all of a sudden, Pandora's box opened and whoosh, everything to the point of transgender bathrooms, gender fluidity, terms that we'd never even heard before. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, it really all started with Bruce Jenner. I think that was the big launch of the whole transgender awareness or movement and sympathy. I mean, I can't tell you how many people, if you saw the comments, and we're talking about Christians, Catholics, saying, oh, we're so happy for him that he's found happiness now in his identity. I'm sitting there going, no, he needs help. He needs counseling. You know, he should be seeing a psychiatrist for saying, why, you know, am I feeling this way? And it's just like, and from that it exploded. I mean, he got that award, and everyone's just embracing that. Isn't this wonderful? And then a bunch of us are going, no, it's not good. So it's pretty scary, but when you think about all this, it really goes back, you know, like we were saying, like contraception, then abortion, then gay marriage. But look at how our society has just like transformed and morphed. And the other side, basically, I can remember when I was a public school teacher, you say, like, how did the whole gay thing get going so fiercely in New York? Well, they were trying to sneak into the first grade curriculum about teaching how normal this is for Heather to have two mommies and so and so. And I remember leading with Father Pomona protest against the curriculum, and we rose awareness and it got thrown out. But this has been a thing that's been plotted for decades. This is not, it just, now it's got to this point. But those who wanted to change the whole climate in our country, according to, you know, looking at the sexes, it started decades and decades ago of infiltrating into the schools, and even with gay people now, it's like you can't say anything or you're anti them, you're hateful.
You're hateful.
It's right. All this, and we're not hateful. I mean, I have many friends who are gay, but no, it's okay to be gay. We've covered this show, this topic on our shows before about the courage ministry and all that.
Well, what you're saying is the sin is not the attraction. If you have that same-sex attraction, that in itself, as the Catechism says very clearly, having that attraction is not, it's acting on it. That is the problem.
Exactly.
But that is the same for anyone in terms of those who have heterosexual tendencies.
Exactly.
The sexual relations are meant for marriage and procreation. This is what the Church teaches us in a marriage between a man and a woman. The same restrictions or the same beautiful teachings the Church gives our brothers and sisters with same-sex attraction, or someone who has a gender issue, possibly struggling from some sort of a gender issue, is the same for everybody across the board.
Right.
This idea, we have to accept ourselves as we are in the image and likeness of God, but there is a place for the gift of sexuality.
The teaching of the Church is very clearly, love the sinner, hate
the sin.
Right.
Exactly.
And that goes for any sin, like you said, across the board. It is easier sometimes to just say, oh, pity party, or yes, I support you. What does support somebody really mean?
Or accompany, we hear that a lot.
Accompany them.
Accompany,
Yeah.
I walk with you. What does that really mean?
And where are you going? Where, as Father Mitch, we just heard him on a program the other day, who he illustrated this so beautifully. He said, yeah, when you're talking about accompanying the sinner, what does that mean? Right. Where are you accompanying them to?
Down the road?
Yeah.
And also, you are
more?
coming from where? That's another
That's
question you have to ask, because most of these issues with the transgender agenda and people thinking that they are someone who they are not, one day and the next day they're somebody else. And what is the real underlying issue? Is it a father wound? Is it a mother wound?
Right.
But because the transgender indicators are just like the symptoms, but they're not the root of.
And also we're seeing, and many experts on my program, my radio program, we've discussed this topic. Dr. Richard Fitzgibbons, who's an expert in this, Dr. Meg Meeker, says normally if young people are feeling that they may be more inclined, you know, toward feminine things if they're a boy, or masculine things if they're a girl, it normally really is just sometimes a phase. And yet they're also getting great pressure now from the culture that this is a cool thing to do in grade school and high school. It used to be, you know, homosexual was a cool in thing. Now it's moved over to the transgender. And so that, in addition to maybe some things they're struggling with as a child, you know, normal feelings, a little bit of confusion as you go through puberty or a phase, they're saying, no, you have to be this, that, or the other thing. But what is so, I think, interesting to me is how can you say you're one thing and then the next day say you're something else? Harvard put out a student guide last year that said that gender is fluid. One day if you feel like a man, you can go into the man's bathroom. One day if you feel like a woman, you can go into the woman's bathroom, regardless of what your birth certificate says. So how do you enforce that? How do you legislate that? Because they want it enforced, they want it legislated, they want it embraced, and they want it promoted.
Well, I mean, it's all very scary. And I can remember, Teresa, you and I were at an event, and a woman was talking to us how she was so upset that her niece was becoming her nephew. And we said, well, how old is this young person that this is happening? They're going to have, they were starting with the hormonal pills, and then they were going to have surgery. And she said, 14, 15 years old. And we were like, what? And the parents are allowing this? And she said, yes, sadly to say, their insurance will not pay. She was going to have a radical mastectomy.
She did. She went ahead and
had it. She went ahead and had it. This young girl, remember, 15 years old, a radical mastectomy, so she could begin all this process to become a boy. So she said, my niece is becoming my nephew. And she was so shocked. And she said, yeah. And I said, well, what's wrong with the parents? Why didn't they take the child for counseling first? Go for counseling. I mean, why would you just sign off on your insurance, and what the insurance wasn't paying, they're paying out of their pocket because, oh, they're afraid.
And they want to be supporting of her.
They want to be supportive, and they were afraid what she might do if they don't go along with this. Afraid what she might do. Is that how we raise your children? Oh, anytime they don't want to do something, or you got to go along with it no matter what?
Well, this is what I don't understand. Any good psychologist, such as, and we've talked about this with Dr. Ray Grundy, Dr. Greg Popchak, two of our top Catholic psychologists on EWTN Radio, we know that, and I'm not a psychologist, but we know that the part of the brain that recognizes any type of danger or problematic situations and is not fully developed until late teens, early 20s.
That's right.
And so this is why we have many of the laws that we do in our country in terms of children cannot drink under the age of 21, or they can't drive before the age of 16. There's limitations on smoking, all these different things that we say no because you're not old enough to understand the complications. And yet, when it comes to this, we're discriminating. We're you know, not allowing them to be who they are to be.
It's encouraged at age 5. You know, little
we need to get to our clip with
little Billy.
with Father Chris. But leading into this, he is telling us, Father Chris, of course, is the Marian Helpers, and he's a wonderful priest and a teacher. You see him here on EWTN. He talks a lot about Divine Mercy, but he's also has a great understanding of the depth of what's going on in our culture, and he teaches all around the country at seminars and whatnot. We spoke with him about how did we get here and what's happening with this transgender agenda. And he says, in this case, he knows where it's coming from, and he knows why. Take a listen. This is a really important interview with Father Chris Alar.
If Satan is able to confuse our gender identity, he's going for the jugular vein. You see, he knows his time is limited. He knows that he has one last chance here before our Lord is coming again. So what is he going to do when he knows his time is running out? He's going to go for the jugular. That is the jugular in one sense, because our very being, as I said, is who we are as man or woman. But yet, he has set the stage for this through so many other ways that has led to this point, starting with contraception, which back in the 1930s, every Christian church was against, and now every Christian church is for, except Catholicism. What about abortion? As we get decades later, we start introducing legally the ability to take a human life. Then we go into gay marriage, which confuses and takes away the sacredness of the sacrament given by God between a man and a woman, because the man and the woman are the image of the Trinity, the family. Who is the Trinity? In fact, God has to be a Trinity. People say, well, why does God have to be a Trinity? It does matter what religion you are, and Christianity believes God is a Trinity, and it has to be that way. Why? Because God is love. And in order for there to be love, you need a community of persons. If I'm the only person who ever existed, there can't be love. But if there is love, you need a lover, you need the beloved, and you need the love between them. This is the Trinity. God the Father is the lover, God the Son is the beloved, and the love between them is so great it generates a third person, the Holy Spirit. That's who the Holy Spirit is. The love between the Father and the Son. This is theological. Now, who's the family? The family is a mirror of the Trinity. You have the husband, the lover. You have the wife, the beloved. And the love between them is so great, it generates a third person, the child. You see, you can't have that between two women or between two men. They can love each other, absolutely. But love does not have to be defined in that sense by genital contact. Society wants us to believe it is so. So when the society turned on marriage being between a man and a woman, we lost this identity. And we are now disfiguring the gift God gave us. Now we go into gender confusion. And this is the jugular for Satan. So you see contraception, which led to abortion. Abortion, which led to gay marriage because you don't need the child in that genital contact called love. And now gender identity confusion, that I don't even know who I am. It's a progression that Satan has tried to twist humanity, fallen humanity, to fall into the pit. But the answer is God's mercy. Because we are created in the image and likeness of God, we know that those things are intrinsically evil. It's Satan's attempt to disfigure the human being, because the human being is in the image and likeness of God. And so we must realize that when the church teaches these things, she's not hateful, she's not intolerant, she's teaching the truth as given to us by God of the sanctity and the dignity of the human person. And contraception destroys that image because it prevents the life. Abortion destroys that image because it kills the life. Gay marriage destroys that image because life is not possible in that union. And finally, gender identity destroys it because then you don't even know who you are. You don't even know that you're made in the image and likeness of God. And so when we take these things in our society today and we call them civil rights or we call them good, we have to remember that the Bible said there will come a time when what is good is called evil and what is evil is called good. Sadly, we have reached that time. And that is why Jesus said, where sin abounds, my mercy and love and grace abound the more. So divine mercy is the penicillin, is the answer to these ills that are infecting our society. We must turn back to Him, trusting Him. As Jesus said, trust is the most important, is the vessel by which all grace is received. How do we trust God? Through the church. And through the church's teaching, we can come to understand with love these areas that society has turned to are mistaken and are wrong. We still love these people. We still embrace them. We still pray for conversions. We don't judge them. We do judge the action. And then we turn it over to God to do the rest. But our church is the pillar and the foundation to know what is the truth. So stay with our church and turn to God's mercy. This is the answer for all these ills.
Once again, that's Father Chris Saylor with the Marian Helpers out of Stockbridge, Massachusetts, a fantastic speaker on this issue and many others that are facing the church. And we will continue to address this question of how in the world did we get here, the truth behind the transgender agenda, when we return on this episode of The Catholic View for Women. Don't go away. Stay right here. We so appreciate your viewership here at The Catholic View for Women on EWTN. Teresa Tomeo again, along with my co-hosts Elena Rodriguez and Janet Morana. We're addressing this question, which many people have asked themselves from time to time, ladies, especially over the last few years. How in the world did we get here? And specifically, we're focusing on what's behind the transgender agenda. Janet, I wanted to go to you coming out of the break, because what I'm noticing as a talk show host and as someone who covers this as part of my program in news copy, because we're seeing all these pieces of legislation that have come forward on the transgender issue, I noticed the same ways that they've played with the language and used semantics in the pro-abortion movement that have now become completely accepted by the culture and the media. The same thing is happening with, the same thing happened with the push for the homosexual agenda Now the same thing is happening with the transgender agenda. It is really important to understand how we can be very easily manipulated and desensitized with that language, isn't it?
Well, it's true. I mean, the way it really has all happened, like I said earlier, is that we're almost considered hateful if we raise any question about any of this stuff. You know, that's how we're looked at. And it's just, you know, it's the new normal. You know, if someone says they're gay and they're getting married, everyone's congratulating them. If someone says, you know, I'm going to go through a surgery, I think I'm a woman, but I'm going to become a man, oh, we're so happy you found yourself. So it's been a gradual infiltration, I think, and the change in the language over time. Because, I mean, I can remember growing up when you never heard of these things at all, period. I mean, you know, there was always back in those days in the 50s and 60s where if a woman had an extramarital affair, that they were considered terrible. And I can remember in my high school, if someone slept around, they were considered the bad kids of the girls of the class. I mean, nowadays it's love the one you're with, do what you want to do. Everything's wonderful and fine. And it's just been and the TV programs, if you look at the TV programs, this has been a gradual infiltration and desensitization on the sitcoms.
Well, Will and Grace had a huge impact on accepting the homosexual lifestyle and eventually so-called same-sex marriage.
Right, but you can remember way back to like Three's Company and everyone kidding around the guy with the two girls and ha 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 ha, isn't this funny? I'm saying, really? They're all living together in one house, the two girls and a guy? And it's been a gradual in the sitcoms and all that. Now we're at the point where anything goes, and everything is supposed to be accessible. And if we stand up and say this is not God's plan for you, we become hateful and judgmental, and it's a real problem. But we have to kind of be kind in how we talk about it, but we have to also be firm and point back to God's plan is, you know, I always think back of, we're good friends with Cardinal Martino over at the Vatican, you know, and he's wonderful. And he has his cross, right? And one day he says to me, you know what this cross is? I said, what? He said, oh, these are my parents. After they died, my siblings gave me their wedding rings and we made my cross. And it's flattened out and it has beautiful filigree around it. So it's the wedding ring of his mother and his father making the cross. And he said, when I marry or any events that I do in my family, he's got a huge family in Italy, he says, I hold up the cross. And he goes, you're all here because of this. Because marriage is between one man and one woman, and that's how God ordained it. And we would not have all the nieces and nephews and all the, you know, he just extends it out.
Well, that's what Father Chris was talking about, what family is, what marriage is.
And what marriage is. You know, and this is like Satan. Satan is roaring his ugly head, as Father Chris says.
Yeah, didn't you think it was brilliant when he said that this is really, he's going for the jugular?
Oh, jugular.
He says, he's just literally, I took note of this because if this didn't get my attention, if Satan is going to confuse you, he's going for the jugular.
Right.
He is going for the jugular. He's not going to waste any time. He is going to take you down. Now,
how are you going to do that?
Yeah.
And what's the easiest way and the most direct way to do that is through, first of all, abortion, right? Made in the image and likeness of God, the human life.
So destroy
as he said, destroy the child, but then you destroy that which gives you life, the family and marriage.
That's right.
And then your own identity, who you are, made in the image and likeness of God, male or female. And there you have it.
If you don't know who you are, you don't know how to live, you don't know what to say, what to do. You can't protect yourself. You're completely, it's like you have laid down all the shields, all the protections you have. You don't want to set yourself up for that kind of failure.
Right.
And what we see with this transgender agenda is that is targeting ever younger and younger. You see shows on television targeted toward teens
and tweens even,
where the models of like boys are dressed almost like girls and they act like girls.
Have you seen this? And this was a video that went viral last year. I've seen 2 of them now. It started in Brooklyn, where you were born and raised, Janet, where at the public library in Brooklyn there was a man, and we pray for him, and not judging his soul, but he was dressed as he was a drag queen. And the subject matter at the public library for children, for little children, I'm talking 3, 4, 5-year-olds with their parents. The place was packed. The title of the presentation was, "Do you want to be a drag queen when you grow up?"
Oh my goodness.
And I received a call pretty much about a month after this video went viral from one of my listeners in Indiana, which is considered a pretty conservative state, the home of Mike Pence, that they were going to do a similar presentation at her public library. So they are going for younger and younger children. And what's happening in this area in terms of a cultural agenda is the same thing that's happened in the abortion agenda, where the stories of the people who have regret, that's called now sex change regret, they are being suppressed, they are being denied access, and these people are being ostracized.
Right.
Just like the women and men from Silent No More.
Exactly. And if you look at the whole picture, I mean, God's plan really is the right way. And if you look statistically, as we know, with gay marriage, there are more divorces now. And within a couple of years of gay marriage, there's domestic violence among these gay marriages. They're not working. They're not working. And like you just pointed out with the transgender agenda, people who have
the suicide rate is extremely high.
Suicide rate is high. They go through these sex change surgeries and then they regret it. And then, like you just said, the suicide rate. So what is that teaching us? That God's way really is the right way. He has our best interest at heart, God's plan for humanity. And when we go against it, we just go down a downward spiral.
Yeah.
What would you suggest for parents to do if they have a young child come to their home one day and say, I think I want to be I'm going to change my gender, dress differently?
I think depending on the age. I mean, if it's a very, first of all, when children are very tiny, you know, little toddlers, they explore different toys. Girls play with trucks and boys play with dolls a little bit. But then it kind of, you know, settles up at a certain point. But if a child is around 8, 9 years old and they start dressing in a boy dresses in his sister's clothing, then I think it's time to go to a good Christian counselor and say, maybe we have a problem here.
And also, don't you think, too, to ask the child, where are you getting this? Why are you feeling this way? Because oftentimes it's coming, and this is what Dr. Ray and Dr. Megmeeker have said on my show. It's coming from outside source. It's not something because they're being told, they're being pressured. And if you've got these types of presentations that are happening in the schools, where do you think they're getting the ideas in the first place?
Well,
oh my goodness, 2 minutes left. We have to do the homework.
Homework. All right, well, talking about keeping things straight in the home, let's start with our kitchen Madonna.
Yes.
This is our patroness.
Keep those religious images out
those
front
holy
and
reminders,
center.
as
holy
Mother
reminders.
Angelic, the religious catalog has plenty of them.
And how about, in this case, images of the Holy Family, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And put those images in your child's bedroom. Every child's bedroom should have a beautiful crucifix, maybe a little holy water font on the wall, fill it with holy water. But then here in the kitchen Madonna is quite beautiful. She has, of course, the kettle here to remind us about nourishing our bodies, but also our souls. The broom is here because we keep our homes clean, but to keep our thoughts clean. And the keys, of course, keeping the home safe and also leading us to the keys to open the kingdom to Jesus. Holy reminders in our home, in your child's bedrooms, and good Catholic books that are available at EWTN Religious Catalog will help keep things healthy.
Oh, and don't forget Damon's website.
Yes, okay, well, back to the rest of the homework now. Number one is to go to the EWTN website, where there are many, many resources, especially on theology of the body. Number two is Damon Owens. Has a beautiful website. TOB.org for the theology of the body. And of course, number three, go to our website, thecatholicviewforwomen.com, for more information. Subscribe to our e-letter, and finally, like us on Facebook.
So the answer to the question is, how in the world did we get here? We know how we got here, because there is evil in the world. We're in a fallen world. We don't have to just sit there and take it. We can lovingly preach the truth and bring people always, always, always back to Christ and the truth of the one holy Catholic apostolic faith, because God's plan is always the best plan, and we are made in His image and likeness. And He loves us enough to make sure that we are going to find our way safely home. Thanks for joining us. And again, visit our website, The Catholic View for Women. We'll see you next time on The View. The Catholic View, by the way.